Good afternoon and welcome back. Today, the College of Architecture at Om Dayal Group of Institutions in Udupi will present the second episode of the webinar series, which is a part of our annual celebrations this year. Right now, we are all confined to our houses, apartments, hostels, and the working, learning, teaching, practicing, it's all happening from home. And it's become a part of our daily lives. Site visits and tours, the educational ones, they've all become things of the past. The university authorities have resorted to online modes of assessment and examination. Some of them have settled for open book tests. So while conducting one of such home assignments, we hatched upon the idea of converting mundane academic activity to a more interesting and exciting online webinar series. Topics of research that the students did varied from subjects like tracing historical developments in forms and thoughts on images of the city. Students were looking at the various art movements and they searched further within the roots of the society for the right vernacular. So this session will be chaired by Professor Sumanto Dev, architect and academician. Sumanto has had a very illustrated career spanning architecture, economics, and management. He completed his PhD from the Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology in Howrah. His professional career, which went on for a decade or so, included real estate and SEZ management. Prior to joining Om Dayal College in 2016, Sumanto was teaching at the Institute of Management at the IIEST. I would hand over the proceedings to Professor Sumanto Dev. Please welcome Dr. Sumanto Dev.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed a great pleasure and privilege for me to be a part of this webinar series, along with 9 pre-final year students of our institute, Srijoni Ganguly, Suparna Mondol, Sritama Pal, Ronit De Roy, Rohan Shamanto, Adrish Kundu, Pranjal Ghosh, Shivam Ghosh, and Rivas Kalingrai. The basic premise of our study on urban design elements was that urban design is best understood and expressed through the study and representation of the built urban environment, and which effectively captures and communicates the essence of urban areas. Here, the students have researched extensively on the elements where I was a mere facilitator, and we had several brainstorming sessions. They collated classic case studies from around the world, analyzed them critically, and as well referred to local examples for elaboration of the idea. Overall, it was a nice journey together, and the students represented the journey both literally and metaphorically in this presentation. And the final result is a nicely woven story, which I personally enjoyed and hope you will all experience the same throughout the journey. And now over to Srijoni and Pranjal for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Suparna, we can start.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope all of you are doing well. The times are tough, but I'm sure all of you are maintaining the protocols and staying safe. I'm Srijoni Ganguly, and with me is Pranjal Ghosh. Pranjal and I are fourth year students from Umdal Group of Institutions, College of Engineering and Architecture. Today, in this webinar, we are going to discuss urban design elements on which we have researched a bit. This work is a combined endeavor of our entire team. We are presenting the research work on behalf of our entire team today. Now, let us start the discussion.
Good afternoon. So coming to the topic, almost all of us have come across terms like fashion designing, graphic designing, product designing, etc. And from their names only, we can more or less visualize what they mean. And we can even conceptualize them in our minds. But when you hear about urban design, what is it that comes to your mind? Srijoni, what about you? What is urban design to you?
Well, when a building loses the focus on its individuality and becomes an integral part of the broader picture, that is the point where architecture fades and urban design becomes prominent. But this broader picture must be within the limits of human perception, or simply speaking, it must have a closure.
Seems a bit complicated. So why don't we try to relate it with something we all know?
Sure, we have all seen Satyajit Ray's films, right?
Yes.
Let us consider a scene of Ray's film and try to relate it to urban design. Every member of Ray's film has specific depths to their own characters, and their fine acting together creates the magic. Similarly, all the elements of an urban area synchronizing with each other and nature peacefully creates a proper urban design, whereby every element has its own unique charm and significance.
Also, there are some protagonists in race films who might get a little more focused upon, even though the whole cast is important. Similarly, in urban design, there can be a few striking features, not too bold or completely out of synchronization, but bold enough to stand out a little and act as a landmark.
Exactly. And then comes closure. Have you ever come across a scene in Ray's film which covered such a vast range of the story or was so whimsically edited that you couldn't intake every part of it, or it was too much for you to digest? Similarly, urban design must have a closure or a range that a human can perceive from one particular point and never feels overdosed.
Great. So now, was that helpful? Have we all got a basic idea about urban design?
Pranjal, you go around in Kolkata often, right? How do you connect the different places in the city and remember them all to reach the correct destination every time?
Well, when I'm going to some known places, I can visualize everything because I know every bit of that place. But when I'm going to some unknown place, I generally ask for directions and try to find the landmarks or streets or anything that the person had referred to while describing the way to my destination.
Really, that's interesting. So, how exactly do you visualize? May I know that?
It depends. It depends because sometimes I visualize certain buildings or landmarks or structures, sometimes signages, sometimes even a tree or a simple tea stall.
Okay,
And yes, when I finally started learning about urban design as an architecture student, I came to know that these objects which I visualize mentally to connect certain places in the city are actually the urban design elements. Should we elaborate a little about those elements?
sure. These elements that help in binding a city or an urban space together, forming an elaborate connection of the spaces and making them safe and recognizable, are called urban design elements.
All right. Srijoni, I'm coming to your place for that group work, but I am confused. I have taken right from my place and I don't know where to go next.
Oh, I'll tell you. Take the SN Roy Road and walk straight for 5 minutes.
Sure. Thanks.
Pranjal could immediately relate to my instructions when I named a particular street. What is a street?
For most people, the path is the predominant element of the image that they perceive of an urban area that connects all the other elements of the urban design and creates an arranged vision of the entire space in the mind's eye. A street, a walkway, transit lines, canals, or railroads, anything can act as a path that an observer moves in customarily, occasionally, or potentially.
So, simply speaking, a path or a street is the predominant urban design element used to connect a city. But then again, if a person has arrived in a new city, then he would definitely not know the specific names of the streets and paths. Hence, they would relate the visual images in their minds in terms of topography, large regions, generalized characters, and broad directional relationships. But if the person knows the city well, then he usually masters the part of path structure and visualizes in terms of specific path and their interrelationships.
Exactly.
A street network is the largest network of space in a city. The street pattern strongly affects the configuration of a city and the urban planning. Central urban axis refers to the linear spatial element dominating the whole urban structure, which plays the role of organizing and controlling the urban space. It is the urban spine of an urban space and can link the separate urban systems like transportation, landscape, land use, etc. Urban central axis dominates the whole urban morphology structure and has the main function to support its spatial shape. The main difference between the urban axis and the central urban axis is in their hierarchy. Central urban axis is the strongest one in the whole urban axis system in terms of its multidimension, such as transportation, landscape, commercial use, public facilities, etc. For example, based on the axial line analysis of cities, it is observed that the city of London has a strong center and strong radials, but the lateral connections between the radials are really weak. In Beijing, both the core and the radials are weak, but the lateral connections between them are really strong. While in Tokyo, the city structure is quite stable with a strong center, strong radials, and strong lateral connections.
Now, let us understand with the help of an example. We'll take a closer look into the Champs-Élysées street of Paris. This street is the thoroughfare that runs through the heart of Paris and links the southeast to the northwest of Paris. It is a 1.2 miles long and 234 feet wide major road that runs from Place de la Concorde to Arc de Triomphe. The avenue consists of two different sectors, the intensely developed northern part and the well landscaped southern part. The Grand Boulevard has approximately 70-foot wide sidewalks and double rows of street trees to buffer pedestrians from traffic.
Now then, what is a boulevard? A boulevard is a very wide street which is divided into parallel realms like commercial streets, pedestrian streets, and residential streets using buffers such as landscaping. This urban landscaping consisting of greeneries that act as buffers is also an urban design element. They basically act as a barrier between the pedestrians and the automobile traffic and also provide shade. Champs-Élysées originally consisted of market gardens, fields, and swamplands on the outskirts of Paris in the medieval ages. In 1828, the Avenue des Champs-Élysées became city property, and sidewalks, fountains, and street lighting were added. While sidewalks are a part of urban streetscape, the fountains are a part of urban landscaping, and the street lighting are a part of street furniture, all of which are different urban design elements.
The urban design elements of the street were again redeveloped in 1998. Car parking zone near the pavement was removed, and the new 850 space for underground parking area was introduced. The sidewalks were widened. Street furniture was reduced and realigned. More signage and landscaping were added. The land use zoning layout was also somewhat changed to enhance the functions and activities of the hotels and cinemas that existed alongside the street.
Let us now take a look at the uses and activities of the street. Most people walk on the sunny north side where there are more cafes, theaters, chain stores, and boutiques. There are even kiosks and landscaping features where people can sit and enjoy. On the contrary, in the south, there are more banks and luxury restaurants, thus, very few stroll on the south. The streets are well lit, and so criminal activity is very less, and the normal activities continue even at night. Urban axis is the main traffic corridor of Paris in the style of a boulevard or avenue. The Champs-Élysées is the hotspot for attracting all people in Paris for its functional supporting such as commercial, recreational, monumental, parks and playgrounds, etc. Owing to urban axis system, east-west axis of the Champs-Élysées extends to La Défense, which is the new CBD, and the north-south axis is an organic growing corridor throughout Paris's history. Parts of the urban districts were arranged along the axis symmetrically, but the whole axis system is basically radial. So now, can you see how important a street can be to connect spaces, increase interaction between people for vehicular and pedestrian purposes, and to identify a particular place in an urban area?
Now, coming to West Bengal, more specifically to Kolkata, let us take another example. Park Street. Park Street in Kolkata is one of the most important streets in the city of joy. Park Street may be just a thoroughfare, but it is Kolkata's prominent attraction. It boasts of a surprisingly diverse range of attractions that range from beautiful colonial buildings to bustling shopping outlets. Park Street originates from Chowrongi Road and connects to Park Circus 7-point crossing in a southeastern direction. The portion of Park Street between Chowrongi Road and Mullik Bazar has been one of the city's attractions for years. Several important roads originate from or intersect at Park Street in the northward and southward directions. Those were namely Russell Street, Middleton Row, Kamak Street, Wood Street, Loudon Street, and Redon Street towards the south, and Free School Street, Rafi Ahmed Kidwai Road towards the north. Park Street also intersects AJC Bose Road at Mullik Bazar crossing and eventually goes to Park Circus, from where other major roads such as Shahid Amir Ali Avenue, Dargah Road, Park Circus connector starts and connects to important areas such as Baliganj, EM Bypass, and CIT Road.
Yes, but the street has certain flaws, don't you agree? Like
Yes.
the pedestrian zones and automobile zones are not distinctly separated by buffers. And throughout the long street, there is no plaza or square, and the street furniture is extremely rare. So people do not often get to rest or interact in their way. So development in the urban design of Park Street is necessary at certain levels. Now, since we are learning about streetscape, let's elaborate a little on street furniture. Street furniture is basically a collective term for objects installed along a street for various purposes. It includes benches, traffic barriers, bollards, post boxes, phone boxes, street lamps, traffic lights, bus stops, tram stops, taxi stands, public lavatories, and waste receptacles. Okay, so now if you have really already crossed the street, look at your left side. Can you see the flower shop at the edge of the road? Take the street to the right of the shop and walk for 2 minutes.
Yes, I can see the flower shop, but hold on. Before that, tell me one thing. What is exactly an edge?
Oh, edge. Edges are actually boundaries or barriers, which are more or less penetrable and differentiate one region of an urban area from another. They act as lateral references. Their boundaries between two phases, almost like linear breaks in continuity. Shores, railroad cuts, edges of development, walls, anything can be an edge. So, Pranjal, are you there yet?
I just crossed the road and now I'm here at the junction of four roads. Where do I go next?
Oh, I know. That's the 4-point crossing, the node from where you must take the correct path that leads to my home.
Whoa. Srijani could immediately relate to my location when I mentioned the node. But what is a node?
Nodes. Nodes are convergent points, the strategic spots in a city where the subjects can enter and again divert in different directions from there. It acts as an inclusive focus to and from which a subject is traveling. They may be primarily junctions, a crossing or convergence, or places of break in transportation.
So, in short, our node is generally the convergence of several paths or streets, which can often become a prominent feature. It is a very significant urban design element. Let us go through an example.
Okay, so let's talk about the Times Square in New York. Generally, a square in urban design refers to an open area or a plaza, but Times Square is basically the intersection of four major roads which had taken the shape of a square, thus gaining the name Times Square. Until recently, it was a congested intersection only. It gained some features through certain changes in the urban design of the area. Now, it is a glorified intersection of streets that serves as a public square as well.
The boundaries of the Times Square or the streets that intersect at the square are the 42nd Street, 47th Street, the 7th Avenue, and the Broadway. At the southern end of the intersection stood the Times headquarters of New York, though it is a vacant land now. In 1910, it invented the electronic news ticker, which digitally showed news updates and live updates of sports events. Thus, people would gather by the thousands on the sidewalks to watch. In 1917, the electronic billboard, which is another urban design element we'll discuss later, was introduced by the Times headquarters. Thereafter, on a big sports event day, the sidewalks got so flooded with crowds that the traffic movement had to be shut down.
The Times Square congestion problems continued for over decades. With more than 356,000 pedestrians and over 50,000 cars passing by every day, the Times Square was one of New York's most congested intersections in 2009, and yet it was one of Manhattan's most vibrant public spaces. 90% of the space was allocated to vehicular movement, while there were 7 times as many pedestrians in Times Square as automobiles. In 2009, the Transportation Commissioner announced a $1.5 million project that would close Broadway for vehicular traffic from the 42nd Street to the 47th Street and turn it into a public plaza.
And initially, this transformed area only had lawn furniture, but permanent changes were made in 2010. Planters, tables, and chairs were installed, and the selected part of the Broadway was redesigned as a proper public place. Though this didn't completely solve the congestion problems at the intersection, it did reduce pedestrian fatalities to a large extent. Despite failing to be a foolproof solution, the changes made in the design of the intersection turned the place into an interesting urban design element that primarily serves as a node but can also be called as a square.
Now, if you look at the plan of Times Square, you can
Yeah.
see the black dotted line, which is the boundary of the square. The light gray areas within the boundary are the recently made plaza in 2009. They block the vehicular connectivity of the Broadway from the 47th Street to the 42nd Street that serves as a public square now. The vehicular connectivity of the Broadway is redirected to the 7th Avenue instead.
Another example from India now.
Okay.
So let us talk about Connaught Place in New Delhi, and how it serves as one of the most significant nodes as well as one of the largest financial, commercial, and business center for Delhi. Prior to the construction of the Connaught Place or CP, there used to be ridges with thick forests and wild pigs. The CP was so made that it stands as the circular enclosure for a circular plaza with wide roads on all sides. The CP was made two-story, the lower for commercial usage and the upper floor for residential purposes. The circular plan of the node makes it different from the surrounding street networks of the city, and the grand width, though not relevant to the people in the past where traffic was much lesser, but today the node uh, serves as a very significant junction for the smooth flow of heavy traffic. Also, the public plaza at the center provides high scope for social and cultural interactions. 9 major roads meet at Connaught Place. Kasturba Marg, Gandhi Marg connects the node to the hexagon of India Gate and the Rajpath. The node is directly connected to Minto Street Market, the Parliament, Jantar Mantar, Eastern and Western High Court, Reserve Bank, and the Mandi House, which is the cultural hub of Delhi through the other streets.
Okay. So now if you're done here, may I ask you if you're still standing at the node? If so, please take the path that runs along the red colored temple of Lord Shiva. Can you spot the landmark?
Yes, I definitely can.
Pranjal could understand which path amongst the four he should take when I referred to a particular landmark that seeks the attention of people passing by. Then what is a landmark?
See, an external physical quantity that serves as a point of reference for the destination to be reached, whereby the observer can locate it but does not enter, can be termed as a landmark. They are usually rather simply defined physical objects such as buildings, signs, stores, etc. These are local landmarks. On the other hand, some landmarks can be observed from a long distance and from many angles, more prominent than the smaller elements, and serves as radial references. They are considered to be as important as the orientation and planning of a city.
Yes. Actually, when a person visits a city for the first time, they tend to map the city through these landmarks. It is the only element that makes the city memorable for a person. It can be any attractive character of the building or element that makes it a landmark. It can be the color of the element, the orientation of openings, location of the building, the function, or any significant event that has happened in or around it. Whenever a city is named, our mind automatically tends to think of certain landmarks. For example, if we talk about Kolkata, then Victoria Memorial comes to our mind immediately. But to identify a certain locality inside a city, we refer to local landmarks like food stalls, shops, temples, or even a tree.
Let us now look into an example of a landmark.
Hmm.
We'll be discussing how the Eiffel Tower in Paris serves as a radial references and a grand landmark. It is one of the most visited sites in the entire world. Located at the heart of Paris, it is composed of massive lattice work structure, and it is impossible for someone to miss out on a structure like this while passing by. Thus, with time, besides being an international landmark, it became one of the most recognizable structure in human history with thousands of visitors every day.
The Eiffel Tower can be seen from many and various points around Paris and its suburbs. It serves as a powerful and distinctive symbol of the city of Paris. Rising to a height of 324 meters, it can be seen from all over Paris and beyond, day and night until 1 a.m. because of its vibrant lighting. These iconic landmarks often play a consistent role in upholding the economy of a city by attracting tourists, and thus business emerges surrounding the particular area and also strengthens the local economy. It enhances growth in employment in the restoration industry, in construction trades, professionals, and product manufacturing.
Previously, we were talking about Victoria Memorial, right?
Mhm.
So let us talk about Victoria Memorial now. It is one of the most significant buildings in Kolkata. This huge white marble museum, made from Makrana marbles from Rajasthan, is filled with a vast collection of remnants from the period of British Empire rule in India. The forms in the museum, like the Great Dome, clustered with four subsidiary octagonal domed chhatris, the high portals, the terrace, and the domed corner towers speak of a splendid richness in architecture. The memorial is situated on 64 acres of land, with the building covering 338 feet by 228 feet. It stands gloriously in one of Kolkata's most prosperous districts, Maidan. Many significant buildings, such as Birla Planetarium, St. Paul's Cathedral, Elliott Park, Netaji Bhavan, Indian Museum, Shahid Minar, Raj Bhavan, Fort William, and Calcutta Town Hall are located near the Victoria Memorial. It is 5 kilometers away from Howrah Bridge, and so it is a grand landmark that is visible to most people traveling from Howrah to Kolkata and vice versa.
Okay. So now, Pranjal, may I know about your whereabouts?
I have walked down walked down the street along the landmark, and now I am standing at the stairs of a small plaza. Should I go across it?
Yes, sure. Enjoy your walk through the beautiful little enclosure as we elaborate on the plaza as an urban design element. What is a plaza?
From a narrow corridor space or channel, when one enters into a large open space, it is known as plaza. It produces a refreshing impact on the minds of the person and also provides scope to view as well as to appreciate urban masses and forms around it.
Ideally, a plaza must be enclosed on all sides by uniform building masses so
Yeah.
that the attention of the observer is focused on the space as an entity. The feeling of enclosure is largely determined by the relation of the viewing distance to the building height as seen by the normal frontal field of view. That is, the inclination of the line joining the observer's eye with the top of the enclosure. A 45-degree view gives full enclosure and an intimate feeling, while a 30-degree view gives a threshold of an enclosure, and the 18-degree view gives minimum enclosure. That is, suppose you are the observer and you are standing at the center of a plaza. If your eyes make an angle of 45 degree with the top of the buildings enclosing the plaza on all sides, then it gets a full enclosure.
Now, the character of an urban plaza is distinguished by the quality of its enclosure, the quality of treatment, and activity that occurs in it. They must be designed so that they always attract people for social, cultural, commercial, as well as recreational activities. Let us take an example and understand the concept of a plaza. We shall discuss the Trafalgar Square at the city of Westminster here. The Trafalgar Square was laid out by Charles Barry in 1840. Dominated by Nelson's columns and streets on all sides, the square is enclosed by fine buildings, including the Church of St. Martin in the Fields and South Africa House to the east, Canada House to the west, and the National Gallery to the north.
So the square was basically implemented for the pedestrians to enjoy their walk away from the hassle of the busy vehicular streets. There were steps on both the ends of the northern side of the square for the pedestrians to access it. Yet, despite its grandeur, by 1990, the square had been choked by heavy traffic on all sides and pedestrian movement through the square was minimal. 180 different institutions proposed several solutions for this problem. The most significant one was to close the street on the northern side for vehicular movement, making it into a broad new terrace for the National Gallery and link it to the square via a flight of steps in the middle and getting rid of the steps at the two corners. You can see the change in the pedestrian movements after the changes were made in the urban design in the map. In the first picture, The two dotted circles are the steps at the two corners of the northern side that lead to the square. But as you can see, the pedestrian movement through the square is minimal because of the traffic. In the second picture, the street on the north has been turned into a terrace and the flight of steps have been designed at the center, whereby pedestrian movement has sharply increased through the square.
Moreover, below the terrace, a new cafe with outdoor sitting facilities makes a much needed amenity for the public. Detailed improvements in the square and the adjacent streets include new seating, improved lighting, and traffic signage, and a paving strategy that utilizes visual and textural contrasts. Keeping Barry's original design in mind, traditional materials were used for redesigning the square. Yorkstone, granite, and bronze, in addition to salvaged granite bollards and slabs, which originally formed part to the north terrace retaining wall. Every aspect of the redesign improves universal access, including two new platform lifts and disabled lavatories. This is one of the most successful transformations that has beautifully created a perfect urban plaza.
Yes. So now we have been coming across terms like signage and billboards while talking about plaza or nodes, and we are coming across them often. So, what are these billboards and signages? Urban signage is a visual media message created by a combination of different codes such as verbal, architectural, compositional, graphical, colored, or pictorial to give clear indication of an existing space or a structure to an observer. A billboard, on the other hand, is a large outdoor advertising structure typically found in high traffic areas such as alongside busy roads for presenting large advertisements to passing pedestrians, which the brands use for promotion of their new products. A digital billboard is a billboard that displays digital images that are changed by a computer every few seconds and primarily used for advertising or giving news updates or even to serve public service purposes at times.
So what now? Which house is yours?
The blue one which is three-storied, somewhat at the middle of the district.
Okay. I'll be reaching in a minute or two. Let's take a look at the meaning of district by that time. So, what is a district?
Districts are basically a sectional part of the city that an observer is considered to conceive within two-dimensional extent. Every district has its own specific common identifying characters. Let us take an example and understand. We shall talk about the sustainable urban district of Vauban in Germany. It is built on a 94-acre site that was a former French military base located at the southern edge of Fribourg. In 1990, there was a serious housing shortage in Fribourg, so the city decided to develop the site as a new sustainable urban district, creating a development corporation to plan the site, prepare infrastructure, and oversee development of the project.
Few people may know that a competition was held in 1994 for redesigning the district of Vauban and to provide a master plan for a high-density housing district that would include spaces for small businesses as well as public services infrastructure, including schools, kindergartens, and recreational areas. Pedestrian streets and bicycle parking areas were to be prioritized over automobiles, and the city's light rail line was to be extended into the heart of the community to link the district to the center of the city. The houses were to be built with maximum energy efficiency. These proposals were required to preserve the existing trees and other natural features, including the creek running at the edge of the southern boundary of the site.
And the final master plan that was derived did deviate a little from the initial proposals. In the picture, you can see a road in light yellow named Vauban Alley, which is the central avenue of the district. Besides that, the dotted lines indicate the pedestrian zone and the cycle path. The dark green areas are the public spaces full of greeneries. This avenue meets at the main road or the central corridor that connects the district with the center of the city of Freiburg and the southern villages. The central corridor is lined on both sides by local businesses. The dark blue areas are the parking zones and the orange ones are the car-free residential areas, while the brown ones are the residences with parking. Near House 37, where Vauban Alley takes a sharp turn, there is a square known as the Doplinplatz. On the north side of the avenue is the residential area for the SUSI and the Students' Village. Further north, the areas in yellow ochre are commercial premises, and besides that, the red plot named Kiga is the kindergarten. In the south, the red plot at the junction of the avenue and the central corridor is the school, and there is another kindergarten, below which there is a sports arena, which I think is not visible in the map. The red circles on the avenue signify tram and bus stops, and the areas in faint pink are vacant lands with future proposals. On the east of the central corridor, there is a solar power plant behind the residentials.
So, the Sustainable Urban District of Vauban is highly acclaimed for both its planning and energy consumption systems and has been recognized with several prestigious awards. A district might have different types of building blocks. They are differentiated on the basis of pattern, grain, and texture. An urban pattern is the geometry formed by roots, open spaces, and buildings. Grain is the degree of fineness or coarseness in an urban area. Texture is the degree of mixture of fine and coarse elements. For example, a suburban area with small houses on small plots has a fine grain and uniform texture. Small houses on varying size plots can be termed as fine grains, but an uneven texture. Large blocks with buildings of varying sizes can be described as coarse grain and uneven texture. And if the buildings are uniform in size, they can be described as having a coarse grain but an uniform texture. And during this conversation, no one actually recognized that finally here I am at Srijoni's place.
Okay, so today we have discussed various significant elements of urban design in this webinar. But how is urban design relevant, or how is its implementation important to us? Understanding of urban design is important to determine whether an urban space that has gradually developed through centuries needs to be preserved for its efficient, naturally built up design, or something better should be generated in order to make it more user friendly. In short, urban design is necessary to analyze an urban space, detect any problem regarding the functionality of the space, and deal with it or come up with a convenient solution. A great solution always comes with a great idea, but there are other factors and some constraints as well in case of any design. There is a robust technique known as the space syntax method that can be used for describing and analyzing patterns of architectural space both at building level and urban level, and to foresee the functional outcomes for different probable solutions considered for the redevelopment of an urban space. So that is all for today. I hope all of you have enjoyed this discussion session with us on urban design and its elements. We will be ending here. Have a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Srijoni. Thank you, Pranjal. This presentation reminds me of my economics class, where it used to start with sweet things like tea, coffee, sugar, and then used to culminate into complex differential equations. In this presentation also, they started with a simple, innocent story and slowly, nicely developed into a critical appraisal. And they referred to human behavior components. They took lessons from present day analyzing tools like space syntax and agent-based simulations, which been used extensively in urban design research. And ultimately, they left with showing a direction where design can focus on conservative and generative use of space.
We might have lost Sumanto. So the panel is open to questions on the Facebook link as we are live on Facebook. So, but unfortunately, we haven't had any questions. We've had several comments though. So I think we can wind it up today, and I need to thank the entire team, including the mentor and the presenters and the people who have worked behind the scene. All of you for a very exclusive event. See, ultimately, what matters is how we have been able to deal with architecture and the city as a whole, or rather the urban environment that we thrive in. In the past and even today, I have had the opportunity to talk to people who were, to say the least, they were a little confused regarding the studies in architecture and what it exactly means to the society. But at the same time, I mean, we have come across certain phases like architect of the victory, architect of the team, or even, let's say, computer architecture. We come across these terms pretty often, and I think the known architect is familiar with these phrases. And quite a lot of them use it in their daily language. So that's how we should define an architect: the leader, the visionary, and the technologist at the same time. And a person who is aware of what is happening around us and who would make it simple for the others to appreciate the environment. So that's how the architect and the urban designer would or should perform and deliver the goods in the long run. And we hope that this good work shall be carried on in the future as well. Thank you all. Thanks for giving.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.